As Singapore's sovereign wealth fund, GIC is responsible for preserving and enhancing the international purchasing power of the country's reserves. GIC is one of the most sophisticated and influential sovereign wealth funds globally. Focused across multiple asset classes and geographies, GIC recently celebrated its 40th anniversary. GIC's current CEO, Chow Kiat, has been with the fund his entire career, and his journey to CEO echoes the value of taking the long view. I sat down with him recently to get a window into the fund's long-term thematic approach, the emphasis on disruptive technology and sustainability, and how he sees 2022 and beyond.
Well, Gokul, welcome to GIC.
Thank you. It's great to be here. It's great to be here in person. We're on the cusp of a meaningfully different investment paradigm. Over the last 10 years almost, for one reason or the other, we've had highly accommodative policy. We've had recovering growth. We're now in an environment where inflation is top of mind.
Right.
How do you think about that as it relates to the skill set within an organization to actually transition from one environment to one that's actually very, very different?
Yeah, great question. I think you used the word transition, right? I think that's exactly, how we are looking at the situation. It's a 10-year of what people would call everything rally, vast sectors, right, doing really well in the financial market. But going ahead, I think we have quite a few things we think, are in the process of, moving to a different state. COVID is one of them. Perhaps we are moving from the pandemic to an endemic state. The second is macro in terms of the economy. We think that perhaps there is going to be a handoff from public sector to private sector. As we know, last 2 years in response to this very big economic blow coming from COVID, public sectors, right, has gone all in, right? Lots of countries came out with stimulus packages amounting to 10 or even 20% of GDP. Huge. So public sector has been doing a lot of the heavy lifting. And we think it's sort of the time for the private sector to take over. I think the big issue is market prices. Whether market prices are still reflective of, you might say, the old state. So how much of the prices are reflecting the old and the new? So we think that indeed in this period, maybe just 1, 2, 3 years, there will be quite a bit of volatility and in some way opportunities. And this in a way coincide with some very big, trends on the business front. Digitalization continues. And in fact, on the technology side, there's almost an explosion of new things, right? From artificial intelligence to synthetic biology to energy innovation. So that's what the GIC in a way has been preparing for last couple of years.
Almost looking forward to, sounds like.
Be careful what you wish for.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
I have a question about long-termism. You spoke about long-term investing. Is this something that you've incorporated into the organization very consciously?
Long-termism is kind of a top of mind issue for us. Frankly, it's at least partly because we think we're not very good at doing short-term stuff. Sort of taking a step back in terms of how long-term mindset benefits, generation of return. We think about harvesting risk premium, one of which is to take on the so-called liquidity premium in the private side. Mm-hmm. We think about life cycle investing. You can follow an entrepreneur from the startup stage all the way to a huge listed company. So we identify like a whole list of positive things that could come from keeping a long-term sort of stance. Of course, the issue is, can you execute it, right? Because it takes time, and it requires that kind of process and mindset. But because we started quite early, whether it's in private equity, real estate, infrastructure, and in some cases as far back as 30 years ago, thankfully have built up actually a fairly good set of partners, external managers, all very successful fund managers now. We supported them when they were very small. Now they are giants of the industry. And because of the long experience we have with them, we don't just invest in their funds, we do a lot of co-investment with them. So that has worked out quite well for us.
So, Kiat, I have to ask you about China. Right. It's so much of what we do in this part of the world, frankly, in any part of the world, right, just given it's the world's second largest economy. You've obviously been a long-term, consistent investor in China as an organization over the years, across a variety of different asset classes. How do you think about China right now?
So as you said, China is big and important. We believe that any global investors need to have presence in that market, as we have been for more than 25 years now. If you have invested in China over a long period of time, you would experience every 3-4 years some sort of the market turmoil. Is par for the course. And we still believe that for China to be successful, they will maintain their reform and opening up policy. Even the recent regulatory move, we see them as correcting some of the gaps and inefficiency. In fact, if you look at some of the recent government statement and pronouncement, you would see the word stability, right, appearing many, many times. That's a signal, and in fact, coupled with the actions that they have taken, that there is concern about excessive slow growth. There have been a whole slew of actions to try and support growth. So this year looks like one where China is, in a way, on sort of the opposite side of some of the Western markets, which is looking to kind of prevent some sort of overheating in the economy with the labor market and everything doing so well.
ESG and sustainability.
Right.
How does this work within the organization? How do you get the organization to start thinking about this and incorporate this? Right. And what sectors are you actually focused on?
Our goal really is to make sustainability investing a system-wide effort that is not just confined to a particular fund or portfolio. We started quite a number of years ago, and it involved a lot of education and learning, and we're still having to do that. It involved a lot of building of, I might say, infrastructure, data in particular. I think everybody is kind of grappling with that. Do you get good data? Because you need that for analysis. We approach it with what we call ODE framework. O stands for offense. Can we go out and find investments in the green sector, in food sustainability area? Those things have worked out well for us, and we think that it's still quite a little bit more we can do. In fact, just energy transition alone, it has been estimated, is 3.5 to 4 trillion a year for the next 30 years. Every year you're looking at that. So we think there should be a lot of opportunities in that space. Then D stands for defense, because we have an existing portfolio. We have actually quite a large number of companies. They are going through a period of transition, changing their practices, changing their business model, their product mix. There we are quite actively engaging with many of them to try and work together to figure out how to do that transition well. And just to be complete, the E stands for enterprise excellence. That's just our own operation. Going carbon neutral last year, reduce our own carbon footprint, conserve energy and things like that. We also participate quite a bit in industry effort, working with other investors. We are part of this group called Asia Investor Group for Climate Change that engages with 5 utility companies in Asia. As you know, the utility sector in Asia is a big sort of source of carbon emission. In fact, they account for 23%, which is a very, very high number. So efforts like that, I think, are also helping how GIC can make a contribution.
In many ways, you're on the front lines because you're working with actual businesses who are looking to adapt. So this is not theory, this is practice.
And you encounter, many different situations. What I would say the 3 challenges are data. Second is this kind of trade-off. Sometimes you find that if you transition sort of too fast, let's say from fossil energy to green energy, you have to try and understand how to square the trade-off. The third is, I guess, for investor, is how do you bring private capital into that space to allow for this transition? I think that we have to step up in terms of designing the investment vehicle, right, which has good governance, to allow more of that capital to go into that space.
Something that's been core to you has been this concept of one GIC. And I imagine instilling common culture has actually been a big part of the success and the ability to navigate an organization through good times, bad times, change it to meet a dynamic market environment. And one of the things that COVID's done to all of us, frankly, is the distances have just become greater.
Yeah, COVID is a real challenge. But in our case, thankfully, we became a global company from day one because GIC's mandate from day one was to invest outside of Singapore, sort of all over the world. We have had that DNA for a long time. So even through this very difficult time, I find that purpose, sort of holds everybody together. And I would say what really also helped is the fact that GIC's capital goes towards helping many companies to succeed, right? Because if we do our job well, we deploy our capital well, it should result in successful companies around the world. And these companies create jobs, provide goods and services, pay taxes. So I think really as a purpose-driven company, this is the big plus that has helped us in sort of holding that culture and in fact, hopefully built on it over time.
We were absolutely delighted to have been able to do this with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Wonderful.
Thank you. Yeah.